would rather have your video off, then you can do that. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Natalie. I'm a TerraCore member at Speak for the Trees. So that's a branch of AmeriCorps, and I'll be serving about a year at Speak for the Trees as a community engagement and youth education coordinator. And one of my projects has been coordinating buffs. So welcome everyone, and I'm glad to have you all here today. I'm gonna start off by sharing my screen so we can go over the agenda. And then we'll get started. So does that look good to everyone? Okay, so this is our Boston Urban Forest Friends May 2021 meeting. And this is our agenda for the day. So we'll start with some community updates. We have David is going to talk a little bit about an update for the Equity Council for the Urban Forest Plan. And we have two people, Tamiko and Amanda, talking about some developments happening with trees on Lenox Street. And then we'll open it up to some other updates if we have some time. This section might be a little shorter than normal because we want to make sure we have time for everything else that we need to do today. So then after that, we'll get into a brainstorming session for developing a question that we want to ask the mayoral candidates for an upcoming climate and climate justice forum on June 1st. And we have Bob Timposky here to talk a little bit more about that and give some context. And then we have some people, Jessica and Joe from Crane's Ledge, to present just an update about what's happening there. I know Lisa has talked about it in meetings before, so they're just going to give a little bit more of an overview of what's happening and where they're at. And then our next meeting will be June 11th, and we have Dr. Nina Estrella Luna, who will be coming for a discussion, and she's the equity consultant for the Urban Forest Plan. So I think that'll be a great discussion to have with her. So I will stop sharing my screen and we'll just start with the community updates. So a few things, if you do want to say something, please raise your Zoom hand and I'll call on you. And if you can't figure that out or having some technical difficulties, you can make sure your camera's on and raise your hand, or just throw in the chat that you want to say something. And make sure when I call on you that you say your name and maybe your organization or neighborhood so that everyone who's new knows who's speaking. And then please try to keep it succinct today. We do have some things that we want to give good time to. And so keep it succinct. And yeah, before I hand it off to David real quick, I do have an update from Maggie Owens, who was here last month to talk about the Urban Forest Plan. She let us know that they're finishing up getting the documents about the Community Advisory Board and how to be involved in that translated. And then she'll send them our way and we can send them out to you all. So with that, I'll hand it off to David to talk a little bit more specifically about the Equity Council.
Yeah, thank you and welcome. Happy Friday, everyone. It's great to see this coalition growing. I wanted to first just actually introduce Molly Henry. So some of you have met Eric Candela, who has been our point person over at American Forests. He's out of Detroit. We're transitioning to work with Molly, who's actually out of Rhode Island. So she's here in front of a beautiful forest. Molly, just want to say hi so people see you.
Yes, thank you. I'm here to listen in, and as David mentioned, I am kind of stepping in. We're transitioning, and I'll be supporting Speak for the Trees, and really excited to just hear more about this group. And I'm no stranger to Boston. I know Jessica when I worked for the East Coast Greenway, and so I have some good friends in Boston, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. And I've been working here in Rhode Island on some exciting climate and health tools, and have been with American Forest for 2 years.
So we miss Eric, but Molly is highly qualified and has done some great work in Rhode Island with tree equity mapping. So I just wanted to share and like Natalie mentioned, this material I'm going to drop in the chat window will be translated into other languages. But there is an opportunity, and Nina will be speaking about this further next month, to engage in the Equity Council. So let me drop that as a 2-page PDF into the chat window. And I invite people to read over it. I'll also share my screen real quick. So you can learn a little bit more about the role of residents in becoming part of the working group around the urban forest plan. And I encourage you, at the bottom of the document, there is a link to Dr. Estrella's email address, as well as Maggie Owens. So real quick, this is the map of what the Community Advisory Board is going to look like for the urban forest plan. Residents are invited to be part of this blue circle, the Equity Council, that will work closely with the intergovernmental working group. Collaborating partners will include nonprofits like ours, as well as other groups, but really the main partnership is going to be between the Equity Council and the government working group. This, like Natalie said, will be shared in other languages. So the city right now is in the process of getting it translated. So we'll have that to share with you. But if you go down to the bottom here, there's an explanation around expectations and responsibilities, as well as contact information for Maggie and Nina. So I just wanted to share that out. That's something that was shared with us the other week. If you want me to connect you directly with Nina, I'd be happy to. There's also her email address there. So I think that's all I have, Natalie.
Oh, thanks for sharing, David. I think I'm now gonna hand it off to Tamikwa. I see she's on, and she's gonna talk a little bit more about an update regarding some trees on Lenox Street. Tamikwa?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tamikwa Williams, and I'm a neighbor of the Lenox Street development. My building is adjacent to it, and I'm helping out Amanda, who I thought was coming on, in terms of probably within the last 3 weeks, they had cut off 50 trees, stumps, without the residents knowing it, and they're kind of going through a renovation. And through the process, the city hearing, none of the tree cutting was described or talked about. And since they're in renovations, the residents who are living there, they're not being kept in the loop of what's going on. So they just woke up one day and saw all these trees removed that had been there and had no knowledge of it. So some people were upset, but didn't know where to go. And there's one particular resident, Amanda, who's been speaking up. I went out to support her once I saw the trees missing and documented that it was 50, because the property manager was making claims that it was only 20, and they were saying that it basically was dead, that the trees were dead. But not being an expert or nothing, it didn't look like the majority of those trees needed to be cut. But just as of yesterday, I learned that they took all, like they had left the stump. So now there's nothing on the ground as of yesterday, I learned. So we were starting to get the residents involved about the tree cutting, because pretty much the situation with us being on a heat rise among all the concrete in the building, and the fact that they took the trees along a street that we believe is a public way, we just feel as though they just did the process unfair, without any consultation from the residents, and right before the summer. Like, it doesn't make sense. So Amanda's working on a response, and we're working on hosting an event on May 22nd to basically recognize what happened with the trees, and to recognize Melnia Cass. If you don't know who she is, but I think that you all do, she's the First Lady of Roxbury, who's a civil rights activist, and fought for many of the things in the local neighborhoods.
Thank you so much, Tamikwa, for sharing. And I know that you all are putting in a lot of effort to, work at this, and that this group is here to support in that. David, if you want to say more.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Nina, I know, has been involved in this as well, Nina La Negra. If you have any updates on the May 22nd event, we'd be happy to share them out either here or later. I know it's still a work in progress.
Absolutely a work in progress. Hi, everybody. I'm apologizing in advance. I'm going to have to leave shortly, but I definitely support Tamikwa and Amanda with trying to raise the awareness around the trees. We're celebrating Melnia Cass on May 22nd. You are all invited to come, please, from between 11 and 1. It's going to include some historical overview of the neighborhood, which is very historical, so it could take a couple of days just to talk about the history of Lower Roxbury. And we're going to have some presentations from a number of local groups, as well as a seed planting by youth. And we'll have Yvonne is going to teach us how to do the Jerusalem dance. So even if you don't care about anything else, you can come and get your party on with Yvonne. And we will also do a procession over to where the trees were removed and just pay respect. We're very conscious of the fact that residents are retaliated against for speaking up about injustices in the housing development. And so we don't want to, we would ideally hold all of this over at Lenox, but there is a problem with that. So we don't want to come with outside solutions. We want to help folks that live there and are affected by what is happening there to be supportive. So maybe some of you can do that too. I'm sure if you talk with Tamika, she can tell you more about how to do that with Lenox, but with Friends of Melnia Cass Boulevard, we do welcome your support as well.
Nina, do you have you said the 22nd at 11. Do you have a location for that you could share?
Yes, we're gonna assemble in the close proximity to 90 Windsor Street, probably on the side of the building between the garden, community garden, and the 90 Windsor Street building.
Okay, I
That's
see. Mhm.
zip code 02120.
I see Amanda is on. It seems like she's having some difficulties connecting to audio, but Yvonne, did you want to say something?
Yes, I want to clarify that the Jerusalem dance originated in Africa and has no political or religious connotations to speak of. Thank you.
Mhm.
Just
Thank you, Yvonne.
Oh, I think Amanda, are you here? Are you connected?
Yes, I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay, so Tamika and Nina just spoke a little bit about what was happening over at Lenox Street, and I didn't know if there was something that you just wanted to add about your experience and what is happening.
I'm a resident over here at Lenox Street, and they just started cutting down the trees in a matter of about it started about almost 8 weeks ago, and there was no notification to any of the remaining residents here. Because we're going through a renovative process, a lot of residents have already left to other places through temporary placement vouchers in Section 8. So the numbers that we have before ownership is a lot different now. But to the remaining residents that are here, they started cutting down a lot of the mature trees that have been since the inception of this housing development and haven't brought any notification to any resident here or has any kind of open discussion or community discussion about the removal of the trees. They just contracted out a landscaping company and they started cutting down the big trees from the top down to the bottom, and they were leaving stumps. And at first, nobody didn't know, but when it came down to the trees along Kendall Street, especially at 3 Kendall, a couple of the residents actually came out and was trying to talk to the actual folks of the staff and was asking them, what are they doing? Why are you cutting the tree down? I'm under the assumption that the guy that was doing the work didn't speak any English or anything like that, because it was after like a good 10 minutes, and I do have this video on my phone. After like a good 10 minutes, they was talking to the guy that was to the two guys that was cutting down that big tree at the corner of Kendall and Sharmet. And they kept asking him, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he just kept cutting down the tree. I'm under the assumption that there was like some kind of language barrier or something like that, or maybe they was instructed to just don't speak to any of the residents. They ask you what you're doing, just cut down the tree. But in total, the stumps that me and Tamika and Caroline from Friends Malia Cast Boulevard Group, what we all have counted in total have been about 50 trees. The email that we got from the development department of Beacon Communities LLC, they said about 20 trees. So we've counted 50, and there has been no real conversation as far as why the trees was cut down. They sent out a notice to the residents as far as saying that the trees were hazardous and all of this negative talk about trees that have been doing their job since before we've been in existence. And at this point in the game, I'm just looking to hold Beacon and BHA accountable as far as replacing the trees that they cut down, because the time of the season that they did it, the cold rain and that snow, that's what these trees needed to actually come to life. And they essentially just cut a lot of the life down. And they said that they did it for the sake of security and surveillance. So I just feel like they're trying to turn Lenox Street development into a correctional facility, because now you can see all the way down to 18 Ditmas Court where the community center is. Before, we used to have all of these shaded trees, all of the greenery and stuff like that, and we don't have it anymore.
Thank you, Amanda. I know we have a lot ahead of us, and this is a topic that is near and dear to a lot of us. I don't know, Natalie. I don't know what next steps are. We're here to support. I think, if you can show up next week to the event. Thank you for sharing those. I put those details in the chat window. There's one question from Margaret. Do we know who the contractor was who removed these trees? Did you see on their truck?
I believe I have the name of the company. It begins with an M, but I just received
Maltby. Sorry.
Malby? Yeah, they do a lot of work
M-A-L-T-B-Y.
around. They do a lot of work around the area too, as far as like.
Maltby, right? M-A-L-T-B-Y. Yeah.
Yep. They do a
And
lot of work. They've been on the property with like the landscape and stuff, like treating the grass and things like that. I just never thought that it would be something drastic like this, because in the beginning they was talking about adding trees and taking away the water tank for the from the sprinklers. So from them talking about adding more trees and taking away water, now they're just taking away mature trees. And it's just like a lot of it doesn't make sense to me, especially where they started construction at 601 and 609, and they're taking trees along the middle and along Kendall Street where they're not even on that side yet. So it's just for me, it's just a blatant show of disrespect. And it's just, I just didn't see the real purpose as to why they will put that money forward to actually do anything like that. So it's just really confusing.
Thank you, Amanda, Tamika, and Nina for sharing all of this. And as we have more information about how the rest of the group can support those efforts, we will make sure to get that information out. David, is there any last thing you want to say? No? Okay. Erica, real quick, if you have something to say, and then we'll move on to the next thing on the agenda.
Yep, I'll be really quick. Sorry to hear about the trees being removed for you guys. So thank you for sharing here. I'm from the Emerald Necklace Conservancy, so my first announcement will be from them. On Arbor Day, April 30th, we were able to plant 10 new trees of 6 different species in Franklin Park. We did this as an Arbor Day youth leadership program effort. So this was for youth employed in our youth leadership program who are paid Boston teens who've been learning about naturalism throughout their program. So we concluded with a really successful planting of trees. I'm gonna put a website for those trees where you can follow how they're doing in the chat. And then my second announcement is as a resident of the Forest Hills neighborhood and just of Massachusetts. I've recently discovered the DCR Breakout Reservation in Saugus, Mass. I highly recommend people check it out. Specifically Camp Nyhan, there's a place called the American Outdoor School, and I've started teaching there. And I just thought, you know, folks interested in trees, they have a lot of great courses on trees, and it's a beautiful area. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Erica. So I think with that, we will move on to the next piece on our agenda, which is having a brainstorming session about a question for us to ask at an upcoming mayoral candidates forum on climate and climate justice. So Bob, if you want to give a little bit more context about what this event is and speak a little bit more about it, we'd love to hear more.
Certainly, thanks. And it's nice to see several of you that I've interacted with electronically or over Zoom or email before. Yeah, I'll try to be quick here. We're having a forum for the mayoral candidates on climate change and climate justice issues in the city of Boston. We want to press all of the candidates to make it a major part of their agenda if they are elected to be our next mayor. And we want to be able to hold them accountable to statements that they make during this forum. At this point, we have dozens of organizations that have signed on to co-sponsor, including your own and several others that are connected with people who are on this call. And yeah, if you want to scroll down there a little, whoever's doing it here, that would be great. And we are also interested in, I can't really stay on very long today. I have some grandkids to pick up, but if you have time to brainstorm a question, if you will send it to me, we will make every effort to include it. I can't promise now, we're trying to balance a lot of different questions, but please do so. In any event, at a minimum, we are definitely dealing with the heat islands and lack of green space question. The larger question of urban forestry is one we've only sort of discussed peripherally, but I would like to hear more about it and what you have in mind. And that's really it, unless anybody has any questions for me. It's on June 1st at 6:30. I would encourage this organization, your organization, Save the Trees, Speak for the Trees, is going to be sending out emails to its list. Some of you on this call have already gotten this email. Please share it with friends, family, other organizations, your own organization, social media, etc. We want to have a big turnout, because if the climate and climate justice movement show up with a big turnout, that has a big effect on the candidates. We need hundreds of people there, in my opinion. So let's turn out, let's put the heat on these folks. They're all going to say, you know, a lot of the right words, but they need to know we mean business. That's it, unless anyone has a question for me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing more about this, Bob. And we'll make sure to get the information out to this group and get it all shared with how to sign up for the forum as well in our meeting notes.
I just dropped in those 2 PDFs you had sent to me yesterday, Bob. So the first one is the flyer and the second one is the endorsers.
Great.
Also a link for more about it. There's a question here from John. Is there a Facebook event page yet, Bob?
Suppose several people have said they're doing it. We got our Twitter thing going and Facebook is next. We should be able to deal with that in the next few days. Thanks.
All right. So
Yvonne?
we thought, oh, go ahead.
quick.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yvonne, did you have a question? Yep.
I have a question for Robert. Has a question about how to stop the demise of the forest in Boston come up already for the candidates, like what strategies they have for stopping people from taking down trees on private property?
It's something that I have not heard any of the candidates speaking to thus far. The organization I work with most of the time, 350 Mass, actually has had some talk about mandating controls on the cutting down of privately owned trees. I know California has had such a rule for many years. If a tree is over some number of inches, you have to get a permit to cut it down. I would personally like to see something like that in the city or the state as a whole.
Yes, do you have access to that law that we can perhaps share?
I could take a look for it. I don't have it right in front of me. I remember reading about it in the past. If I can find it, I'll send it to David
Wonderful.
or
Thank you.
Natalie.
Thank you. Thank you,
Sure.
Robert. That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, I don't want to I know you got a big agenda. I don't want to take any more of your time. I'm sorry I can't stay on with you, but it's nice to see you all. Take
Yeah,
care.
thank
Good
you
luck
so
in
much
your
for
work.
coming.
Sure, bye-bye.
Okay, David, is everything all set for the next step? You're muted.
So we were thinking we would do a little breakout room activity for 5 minutes and see if we could brainstorm a question to, let's see, how many people do we have on the call right now?
29.
29. So how many rooms should that be? Let's do maybe 7 rooms. So it'd be about 4 or 5 people a room. And just get to know each other. And one of the questions that I know Bob is interested in asking at the forum has to do with heat. So when he and I spoke yesterday, he suggested that if we could add they would consider a question probably that would fit under that rubric of heat. So how might we formulate a question, wordsmith some of our ideas to think about the relationship between urban forestry, environmental justice, and heat island. So that's sort of our task for the next, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes is breakout rooms, see if there's some way to fold in those ideas together in a question that would could be posed, no promises here, could be posed at the Mayoral Forum on June 1st. So
Yeah,
before
so
I
if
break,
someone wants
go ahead.
to just make sure to jot down a couple of notes to bring back to the larger group, that would be great. David?
I said, hold on, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. There we go. Okay. So what questions do people have before we break out?
We have one from Lee in the chat. Are there parameters for the question? For instance, can the question have a context/stage setting statement before it?
Yeah, open-ended. I think the idea is we want to sort of generate ideas here, and then we could, Natalie will work on sort of trying to bring all those ideas into conversation and focus it down to a question that we can then share with the group. All right, I'm gonna open up the rooms and we'll take just 5 minutes, just generate ideas, and then we'll have some time to share them out because I do want to leave time for Joe and Jessica to share about their work in Crane's Ledge. So have fun. You should see an invitation to join a room. Are you in a room, Natalie?
Mm-mm. I think because I'm the host. We're both the same person in a way.
That's true. Okay, so I'm gonna go to room, let's see. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for this. Can you see the rooms?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, maybe you want to go to room. I don't care which one you go to. 1 with 3, maybe. So room 6 or 7. 2, 6 or 7.
Oh, what's 2? Yeah, I'll go to 2, I guess.
All right. And then I'll close the rooms in like 4 minutes.
Okay.
terms of word, like the word repair. So I don't know if it's just some stuff around
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had some good conversations. So I think with the time that we have left, David, do we think we want to just have some people who are taking notes, throw everything in the chat, and we can kind of compile the information?
I was about to suggest the exact same thing because I do want to leave time for Joe and Jessica. So if you wouldn't mind, if someone took notes between now and the end of the meeting, if you could drop them in the chat, we'll collect them, see what themes there are, and then we will try to see what we can come up with in the next 24 hours to share with Bob. So with that, I wanted to introduce Joe and Jessica real quick. I don't know where they are. They're somewhere here, but they've been very active in a project out in Hyde Park, Crane Ledge. They're going to share more about that. Joe, Jessica, who's sharing the screen? Is that us or you?
I can share this screen.
You want? Okay, so I need to make you a co-host, Joe.
Yep. And then, and we also have Lisa and John here from our organization. So I'm the newest out of the four who are here. And so I threw this slideshow together, but anyone else feel free to chime in as I go along, especially if
Natalie, you're the host, so you're gonna have to make Joe the co-host. I can't.
Yep, just did it.
Thank you.
All right, here we go. Let me know you can see that.
Yeah, looks great.
Got it. So yeah, I'm gonna be presenting just on the basics. I'm gonna try to give you a sense of the land that we are trying to conserve and the proposed development / destruction project that is proposed and the situation behind it. So we are the Crane Ledge Woods Coalition, and our overall mission is minimum 100% conservation of the land. I say minimum because there are ideas of 100% conservation of the land plus, plus open space for an area that is already designated an environmental justice area, and any other benefits for the community that are not currently available because it is privately owned and enclosed space. It is actually not very well known by the area. The potential of the space is not that well known, which is part of our strategy to raise public awareness and public engagement and connection with the space. So this is who we are. When some of the members who were already parts of the neighborhood associations around here got news of the developer's intent to purchase and build on 14 of, I believe it's full 23 acres of land, they started a grassroots coalition to first inform the community, because the developer didn't really do their due diligence to reach out to the area that they would be impacting. So it was on the community to do that. And they've done a really great job. That's how I came to be here. And so it's a growing coalition. This is the site. So this is the north edge of Hyde Park, right next to Roslindale and Mattapan. And it affects a very large area of multiple neighborhoods. You can see it's right next to that Stop and Shop Plaza on American Legion. It's right up against this Eversource parcel that's right where I live. And that is an old quarry that's now, was a landfill and also a cemetery. And so I've been in contact with Eversource about a different project, and they also were not aware. And so it's very, very important for them to know, because that landfill was also used for considerable lead abatement in the 90s. And any construction would definitely require blasting, which could easily dislodge lead and cause some water contamination that would seep right into the community that they just built.
Right. And also it drains into Stony Brook, which flows into the Charles.
Yep. So it would be,
it's not clear whether the storm sewer system there goes into Stony Brook or goes separately out. And it's a tricky situation. And the other thing, what the lead is from, de-leading the Boston Public Schools.
Yeah.
That's in the system. So it's actually got there's some city responsibility, which we haven't really focused on yet, but should be a consideration.
Yeah, so we're trying to pull Eversource in as, well, we're trying to test the waters with Eversource as a possible advocate, just because of at the very least, the self-preservation interest for Eversource and the city, as Jessica said. Plus the removal of all those trees would increase the flooding, and that could also increase the lead seeping into the groundwater and causing lots of problems. So I have a bunch of pictures to give you a sense of the land. It was the site of a attempted and failed development, I think in the 80s. And so this is a road that has starting to be reclaimed by nature, still exists there currently. And it is the access to access if you were driving. But they would probably be destroying and moving that. So this land has thousands of trees, diverse trees, native to the area, supporting a lot of other kind of plant and other kinds of biological life. There's eastern coyote paths all over the place. Actually, yesterday I just found a eastern coyote skull, and I've seen examples of them all over the place, as well as many, many other animals. John saw a really big owl the other day. There's amazing views of neighborhoods pretty much 270 degrees around the property. But ironically, these neighborhoods that you can see from the property don't have access to the land, and they are in this environmental justice zone because of an inequitable amount of access to open space. Yeah, so this is one looking down towards American Legion Hyde Park area. This is the famous crane ledge itself. And for scale, that's my husband standing on the other side of it. It's enormous. It's a 60-foot ledge. So it's sort of the most extreme geological feature on the land, but the entire property that's proposed for building is, also quite rocky, quite covered in water, much of it standing year round. It would be a significant project to try to build what they propose on it, or to build anything on it, which is why I think the 1980s project was abandoned. So this is the view, and those buildings that you see that are dwarfed down below are 3-story buildings, and it's just an incredibly gorgeous view. So this is what I was mentioning about the environmental justice and land use and equity. Hyde Park tends to have a reputation for having a lot of trees and open space, but it's a lot of private open space, cemeteries, and we are losing our tree canopy in all sort of categories of land faster than all other areas. So, and this piece of land is a big proportion of that tree canopy that if we lose any more of it, we would sort of start going past that threshold of getting the benefits of the tree canopy and just the local ecology in general. So I'm out there a lot. I have a pretty close relationship with the land, and I've been doing land-based research really for the past year, since before this became an issue. And so I'm very familiar with all the biodiversity in the area that we need to protect. And here's some examples of what I was talking about with just how beautiful and diverse the land is, that also makes it an incredible challenge to build on, which would, you know, I can imagine, just like the first project in the 80s, that the developer, knock on wood, gets to start trying to construct on this property. There would definitely be blasting, complete leveling of trees. They'd run out of money and abandon it, and we would be left with devastation. I mean, even if the development was put up, it would not benefit. I mean, a vast majority of over 200 people we've had at our community meetings have been almost unanimously against this development project, because it would be so harmful to the local community and would really add no benefit. There's no need or demand for more housing in our area. There's certainly no need for more traffic. This would add, as I'm going to say later, over 450 parking spaces, 270 rental only units. They only do rental. So no accumulation of generational wealth, not really solving the problem in a systemic way. Obviously devastating ecologically. It would make our summers hotter. It would make our air quality poorer, would make flooding worse. And it's not something that the community needs or wants. So legal required minimum of quote unquote affordable units. And as you can see on this diagram, complete leveling. And so compare the images I just showed you with this aerial diagram. If you actually walk through the space and compare it to this diagram, it really makes no sense at all.
Yeah, and basically what I always said when I first saw this was, it looks like they looked at an aerial view looking straight down on it and said, oh, an open space.
Yeah.
And they plopped a Midwestern suburban development or Southwestern development on top of it.
Yeah.
With no note that the gradient is about, from the upper right of this to the bottom left is about 100 feet.
Yeah.
Of slope. And this is built as if there's no slope. So they're planning to put and there's also not much dirt on top, so you can't just dig in to level it. You have to bring in dirt. It's been moved around on the site already. So this upper right area where the parking lot is bare right now, pretty much, except for this giant rock outcropping in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Which might be the dark spot there. I'm not sure. They might build around it. But all that was scraped clear. So where the next building down, number one, I think, is or I don't know, the next building in the right there, those buildings, actually all of the buildings on the right and toward the bottom on an area where all the dirt's been scraped to. So there's some hills there that they're going to level and probably move down to the left, but they aren't that big. So it's not enough to really build houses on. So it's all mysterious what they're going to do, except take down a lot of trees. It's clear from this that all those little tiny trees that they're going to put there, that's like in 20 years. But what's going to be there at first is going to be like that.
We have a couple hands up if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Some people. Lisa, do you want to say something real quick?
Yes. Yeah, this is a great, presentation. And thank you, Joe and Jessica. So the bare spot that Jessica was mentioning actually could be considered a large meadow. And then there's another internal meadow. It's all got grasses rooted into it. So and the grasses do root, some topsoil, and then under that is ledge. There's a lot of snails there, and that's the area, one of the areas that where water pulls up. So this is a very, thank you, Joe. This is a very natural stormwater management land. And so, you know, of the many issues regarding destruction of it, see the snail shell.
Tons of
Yeah.
snail. And this
Yeah.
water,
Yeah.
some of this water is there year round. So I don't know what wetland, well, I don't know how to determine like what a wetland is, but there's several, and I keep finding more as I explore, but there are several areas that hold water year round.
And so we're looking into that. We're looking into the wetlands ordinances, and we're, you know, we're talking with environmental entities, and so that may be a part of the advocacy.
Yeah, I just finished discussing that today, and I think the big problem is there are ordinances. One exists, one we need to get, but at the same time, there's no implementation of those in the zoning laws where they need to be before they have any teeth.
Yeah.
And that's because it's the city council versus the mayor. And it's going to be interesting to see. The mayor needs more money than the city councilors do, so the developers provide a lot of that. I'm afraid that is the truth in Boston.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see my arrow with this group, but in the back is the field that Lisa was mentioning. And there's also one, a really, really large one up further at the edge of the, what we're calling the lower section that would still be destroyed for building that, again, is crisscrossed all over the place with eastern coyote tracks. It's definitely another habitat. I mean, there's, like I said, there's diverse habitats that are supporting a wide range of life on this land.
I have to depart for another meeting now, but I think I've said my say.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
I can't keep
Jessica, oh, I was gonna say, before she left, I was gonna ask if there was some way that the group here, it is noon, so people might start dropping off, Joe.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
happy to leave the room open, but if there's, and you know, people can ask questions, are there ways that people here can get involved and support this work?
Yeah, I should have put the email on here.
Again, I don't want to cut you off. I'm just mindful of people's schedules and,
Yeah. No, thank you for that.
want to give away.
If people need to hop off, we are recording this so they can watch the end of it if they want to continue.
Crane Ledge email memorized. Crane Ledge.
I can look it up. I think I have it somewhere, maybe. I don't know.
Hey, it's Crane Ledge info at gmail.com. And very soon we're going to have a petition that will be circulating.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have a few questions, so I don't know, Joe, with how much you have left in your presentation versus when you want to take some of the questions.
No, this is the last slide. So this is
Okay.
just, and so I can take, I mean, if you want to help facilitate question taking.
Yeah, I'll facilitate. I'll call in some people. Amanda, I know you've had your hand up for a little while. If you have a question or something to say.
I have a couple of questions and one comment. The pictures that you've taken, Joseph, are like absolutely beautiful, especially of the boulders and just the water and the leaves. It looks like nature is already reclaiming that part of the land. So I'm just curious as far as with the development, and this has been my my confusion with the development movement in Boston since, like, I would say like the late 2010, 2015, stuff like that. I would just like to just pose a question as far as how can we make a project like this and a project like Lenox Street and other parts of the city make hold developers more accountable as far as realizing what they're taking away and what they're actually posing a lot of damage and harm to, because it just seems like they're looking at the land and they're not necessarily really focusing on the history of what was before, or even before the 80s. I'm talking about like the 50s and 60s, like there was such a time.
Oh yeah.
And I just feel with the pictures that you took and just the landscape of everything and just that big tree that you had your husband stand next to, I felt like you tried to shrink him. But
Yeah.
I just felt like I believe that developers really just see land as dollar signs. And I felt like that piece that you showed of the actual development plan as far as, the buildings and they want to put up a private pool in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
That looks like a plan that would do fine in either Fitchburg or Harvard, Massachusetts or something like that. And not so much within the inner city. And just because there is like a tree canopy or like some kind of natural landscape, that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be taken down. And just because there is a need for housing, I believe Boston does have enough housing. It's just the fact of how the city chooses to mitigate the needs of certain people and stuff like that. We don't need to tear down nature just to accommodate that. And then if you want to accommodate, like you said, there's no chance of generational wealth if you're renting, because I know folks that have been renting for like 2, 3 decades and they're still renting. So it just doesn't make sense. But my question for you is, how would you make a project like this and other projects that are going on, how would you make it more understandable for developers to understand that nature is important too? And just because you're adding like 5 buildings and a clubhouse with a pool and you're bringing in 50 trees, how would you help them to understand just the removal of the boulders and stuff like that? How would you try to have them understand just the perpetual damage of
Yeah.
everything? Because you did mention lead and all of that other stuff.
Yeah. So we have a bunch of different sort of branches of our strategy that we're working on with the coalition. The strategy towards the developer is probably the most combative because we've done a lot of research on this particular developer, and we don't see the same kind of public education, public awareness campaign towards the local communities, towards our politicians, working in the same way with someone like Lincoln Property Company. They're based out of Dallas. They're international, multi-billion-dollar corporation. Profit, as you said, is the focus. We probably wouldn't be able to get them to visit the land to form some kind of relationship with it. So we could try to, that could be a part of the strategy. What we're thinking of, though, is more of a broader network building. I'm becoming part of lots of different sort of eco activists, environmental justice groups. And what we really need to do, like you said, is not have all these isolated grassroots efforts fighting these massive, powerful entities on their own, but building a coalition where it's like, okay, we need to be in network with each other constantly, from the smallest, like this one tree is being cut down, to these 14 acres of trees are being cut down, so that we can coalesce where we're needed most urgently and share resources and share, just know what talent we have, what experience we have. So that the network, and thinking about it as a system, and that's really how we're going to try to do the public awareness campaign, is this is a systemic issue. It's not just, we want to save these 14 acres of forest, but it's a systemic problem that's related to many other problems. And that's a hard thing to, and I'm an educator that's in systems thinking is sort of part of my research. So that's something I'm focusing on, is how do we get these complex systemic issues to make sense for people in their local communities. And so that's one thing in our strategy that we're working on. So any support in that, and that takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of, people power. So if anyone wants to support in that way, we welcome you.
And just
Yeah.
another piece, it's just that it's not just trees, it's like natural water streams. It like nature actually really reclaimed the land, and it's just removing of boulders, which, like you said, is going to be some major blasting. It's just, I mean, it's more than just trees and dirt. It's just a factor of that part of the neighborhood and what was once there before that was even built. So it's just a real respect and a understanding at this point. And I believe, like Jessica said prior to, there has to be some real law advocacy as far as ecological things like this, because it shouldn't take a decade before anything like this has teeth. It should take like in a matter of like about 10 to 12 months, because if we don't act on a lot of these things, it's like they're literally turning every space that has a tree and a bush and a plat of grass, they're going to try to put an apartment or a condo or a parking space there. And this has to be slowed down before the whole before the whole city becomes a heat island, and no one will be able to exist anywhere.
Right. Yeah, we totally agree. I see a lot of questions in the chat. If you want to, yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. Yeah, just two things. One is that this is there is the development proposal has been submitted to the Boston Planning and Zoning BPDA, and so there will be an Article 80 process. So that's one of the things that's going to be happening, and so we are going to do whatever we can to make sure that the city follows all of the regulations that exist that look at land impacts and community impacts. And there will be a public comment period. And so we will need lots and lots and lots of people to be writing in during that period, and also to the electeds. And the other thing is, I know there's not much time. I was actually planning to show it next time, but I do have on my screen the answer to what does the property look like on the city maps. I think it would be very helpful if I can share screen.
Yeah, I can stop sharing.
Yeah, let me give you that. You should be good now.
I just want to, while you're getting that together, I just wanted to say there has been conversations around the new climate roadmap and EJ component. The governor signed a couple of months ago a new climate roadmap that has protections specific to EJ communities. That has not yet been codified into practice. So we don't know what the teeth are going to be on that, but this definitely would fall into that. I think it's section 65 or whatever it is of that law.
Okay, I think most of you know, well, if there's ways that you can zoom in on this, I took the City of Boston open space priority parcel maps for neighborhoods. They're very, very interesting. I think they'll be useful for everyone. And what I did is zoom in. I did screenshots and zoom in on Crane Ledge. And this is, I think, a very, very important issue. So see the circle, right? Well, actually, let's start up here. Heat score, right? The heat score, open space can assist in lowering temperatures, reducing heat sink and reducing a lot of, asthma rates and all that kind of thing. So look at the score. Yellow is cooler. Those are areas that have a lot of trees. Look at the hotter. Those are areas that are, they're already way too hot. So let's look at our circle, right? This is the Hyde Park part. So you can see that the land is on the border. Now, I put in the rectangle and the tree icon. So what did this look like? What does this look like without those? Nothing. It shows as if there's nothing there, no green space. And just about all the city maps, unless you're looking at a topological map, pretend that this land is in fact a vacant lot. And then you see the Eversource area, right, which is color-coded green, even though it is private space, privately owned, just like the woods are. there's no trees there. It's just grass. And then if in fact Eversource does go ahead and build a substation, as they had indicated they might be interested in, then that will be gone. And think about it. This whole area of Hyde Park that's in deep red, it's already too hot. That's with the existence of this 24-acre forest. So as David mentioned at our last community meeting, imagine with the destruction, with the removal of all those trees and permeable soil, I mean, how much hotter can this get? Now let's go to the next one, which is the Rosendale part. Okay, there. So let's look down. Here's the woods again. Again, without my icons, it's just blank. Note also that the cemeteries, private and public, show up as green space, and yet this doesn't. And then the neighborhoods just under this 80-foot hillside and ledge in Rosendale, again, score already at the highest heat risk, even with the 24-acre woods. So that's a problem. And then the next one down is flood risk. And so flood risk, again, this is a natural stormwater management land that's very steep. So even with the trees, so here's flood risk. Yellow, lower flood risk, communities with lower flood risk. Dark red, communities with high and highest flood risk. Even with these woods here, even though they don't show up in the map, the area in Rosendale just underneath this land are already dark red. They already get a lot of flooding. We have a neighbor who lives on Claire Ave that said that she grew up ice skating in the frozen runoff from the hill way back, back in the day. That was pooling on American Legion Parkway. So I said that wrong. This is Hyde Park. This is the Hyde Park side. Next one is the Rosendale side. So again, here's the woods. Here's the Rosendale section underneath the cliff. And you can see that here, all these streets and buildings is the highest flood risk. It's the lowest part of the Stony Brook Valley. It does flow into storm drains that go into Stony Brook Culvert. And many of the people living here, there are several large buildings that have subsidized affordable housing. So low income, and then others have moderate income. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I encourage you all, whoever is still on the call, if you have more questions, to reach out to them. We'll include the email in the notes as well. And so I think that is everything for today. And I just want to thank you all. Thank you, Joe and Lisa and Jessica, who hopped off, for coming and speaking about Crane's Ledge. I know a lot of people were interested in hearing more about what was happening because Lisa has raised the issue before. And so I think it was great for everyone to hear this presentation.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And do sign up and share the mayoral forum coming up on June 1st. We'll follow up with that. Hopefully there'll be some opportunity to hear from the mayoral candidates about urban forestry. It is an interesting moment in transition in the city in so many ways. So it's important for us to be together. Thank you.
Yeah. So I just did share the link to the presentation.
Oh, great.
Send us an email at the one I put in the chat, craneledgeinfo@gmail.com. You can also email me directly, or you can put message. Now that you have access to this presentation, you can put comments in the presentation and we can respond. We can chat that way, but happy to talk more.
Well, thank you so much for being here to talk about it. And thank you everyone for joining this meeting. I hope you have a great rest of your day and can get outside and appreciate the trees around you.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.